Corruption in the justice system is a pervasively destructive force in almost all fragile states. It locks countries into a negative peace by exacerbating inequality, disempowering women, distorting justice, and even physically harming citizens. Effective responses to corruption require systematic, contextually grounded analysis. We have used causal loop systems analysis to examine corruption in the police and courts in northern Uganda as a basis for improving strategies to deal with it. A systems analysis looks beyond the corruption risks in the justice system and identifies underlying patterns that drive or enable corruption. Importantly, it allows us to visualize the interactions between these elements. This is critical because while drivers and enablers are often similar in fragile contexts, they interact in different ways, and therefore best practice will not always work. Different responses are needed in different contexts. We see drivers as a factor that motivate choices to engage in corrupt behaviour. For example, in northern Uganda, peer pressure amongst police officers plays a significant role in their choice to demand bribes from citizens. These drivers may not be directly related to corruption itself, as for instance, when citizen fear of physical abuse by the police motivates people to pay bribes. Corruption drivers may originate in political systems, in the citizen perceptions of the prevalence of corruption, from social norms, from existing anti-corruption efforts, informal power structures, and even consequences of other corruption or any combination. Corruption in the police and courts meets real needs, be it survival, protection, or accessing power and wealth. Rarely is it simply a moral lapse. How is systems analysis different from traditional approaches to understanding corruption? Traditional approaches focus on simple cause-effect relationships. For example, it's all about greed or about citizen demand for good governance. It also focuses mainly on what enables corruption. Yet in northern Uganda, while the lack of oversight in the courts creates conditions for corruption, it is not the reason it happens. It is the drivers that make corruption so resilient, and why only addressing the enablers of corruption will not work. Understanding the system of corruption, its functions, drivers, and enablers, offers policymakers the insights necessary to respond strategically. With a systems map, policymakers can identify what kinds of interventions can have positive effects through the system and address those forces that resist change. They can also test the plausibility of a theory of change by plotting it onto the systems map. Systems map allows us to view the problem holistically, question assumptions, and catalyse change in complex social issues, such as corruption.